This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by WeUseCoins.com.
What steps are you taking, if any, to make...
We've got a follow-up question. We're just going to answer first, then if you'd like, you can ask me.
The second part of the question was, what are we getting extra National Guard assets in? Is that what right? Aircraft, specifically aircraft. And I believe the answer to that is yes, we are. I was told last night that the National Guard and the military are adding 4 additional MAFs.
Oh, thank you. What steps are... That's okay. What steps are being taken to ensure that the president's visit doesn't interfere with emergency efforts?
Jeff, answer that.
The question was, what steps are being taken to make sure that the presidential visit does not interrupt operations on battling fire, etc. I've already mentioned before that Colorado Springs Police were very clear that they didn't have the assets to help with the presidential visit, understandably so. We mentioned before that this is a team effort. The El Paso County Sheriff's Office is providing the necessary law enforcement assets to supplement the sheriff's president's protection detail. So we'll be taking care of that so that the city of Colorado Springs can stay on task with the things that they have going on. And we can assure you that his visit will not interrupt fire operations or cause those distractions that have been a concern.
Will he be blocking any roads?
I believe in terms of any roadblocks, those will be very limited. If you've been in the community before, and when we have the president visit, for instance, during Air Force Academy graduation, we've seen before that oftentimes it's a very extensive roadblock scenario. That will not be the case during this visit. We do have members of our traffic unit as well as Colorado State Patrol helping to facilitate any roadblocks that are necessary, but again, those will be extremely limited compared to what you normally see.
The question was about some Obama air restrictions.
The President's advance detail to ensure that there will be no interruptions in our aircraft or air operations over the incident as his party comes in and out of Colorado.
For Jerry Marr, could you just spend a second we see just smoke kind of coming over the mountains. Can you spend a second just describing what it looks like back there?
This has held now for 2 days. So the stuff that we have with the potential to
The criteria are using to determine whether people can go back in?
Sure. I'll try to address that. The question was what specific criteria are being used to evaluate a property to get back into that. First of all, we heard from the CEO of utilities. Utilities is a big issue.
I have a question for Incident Command.
For the IC?
Are there any federal operatives on the ground in the affected area, and are all of them respecting the residents' Second and Fourth Amendment rights?
federal operatives. Are there any federal operatives on the fire, and are they?
Well, I'm thinking about what happened to Katrina, where marshals seized people with weapons and so forth.
You know, we have a couple people associated with the investigation of the cause and origin of the fire, and they're out in the middle of the black spot where there's absolutely nobody around there. So I'm pretty comfortable in saying they're doing the job we got them there for and nothing else.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I have one other item I'd like to bring up. We'd like to put a shout out to UCCS for providing this facility for us and also to helping out last night with the meeting.
I'm Dave Ridley, RidleyReport.com. My question is, do you have any...
Who are you with, sorry?
It's RidleyReport.com. I guess I still didn't get your name.
Oh, okay. Brett Waters.
Okay, Mr. Waters.
Yeah.
Did you have any concerns about, were there any federal mandates leading up to this that restricted you guys in preventing this fire?
Any federal mandates that prevented us? I don't believe so. I mean, I don't believe there's any federal mandates that were restrictive in us preventing the fire. We made a lot of aggressive efforts prior to events with mitigation, with exercises, with planning. So no, I don't believe so.
No restrictions that stopped you from doing this, but were there any restrictions? Was there stuff you can't do in terms of prepping for a fire?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, but just thinking about that, not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, I appreciate your
thanks a lot.
I'm with the LA Times. Tell me about those.
Hey, Tom. They're supposed to protect you.
Wait, I wanted to correct a piece of information that I recorded a reporter saying this, but apparently it's not true. He was saying there's only 10 evacuees left, but no, there's still 168 if that shelter you saw me visit the other day, and that's the exact same number that was there when I was there yesterday. At least as of June 29th. I guess you're probably watching this a day or two later. course, I guess in relation to my federal mandates question, there was one federal mandate that has interfered, and that is the imposition of taxation on the people of Colorado, which has probably prevented both the government and the people of Colorado from spending as much money on preparedness. So I've got a question for you.
Sure.
It's Dave Ridley with RidleyReport.com. Sorry, I only have left hand.
Oh, okay.
I didn't get your name. I know you're with the mayor's office.
Right. Steve Cox.
Okay. Mr. Cox, do you have any concerns about federal mandates and whether they may have played a role in preventing some prevention?
No. You know, that was out there early on, but the way the Forest Service works, they have contracts with private vendors that provide that service. We had air assets from Saturday on. I know there was some frustration in the community about the C-130 assets. That got worked out, but at no time did it impact the firefight.
Is Colorado dependent on the federal government?
Clarify that.
Well, if the federal government wasn't involved, wasn't pulling 15% income tax away from everybody, and then sending in some aid, would that be a better situation or worse?
No, I think the process has been used and used frequently across the country, given our fire danger that we've had in the drought conditions. But I believe that it's working. You know, it's working well. I think there probably, as with any operation, there's room for improvement. And when we do an after-action report, we'll identify those and then make the tweaks that need to be made. So,
all right. Thanks so much for your time and accessibility.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed or not, but there were some homeowners there at that news conference, it looked like, who had sort of crashed the news conference to ask questions, which I think is a really good idea. Of course, there's eventually going to be a sort of a clash, if there isn't already, between indie media, average people, and the mainstream press who want to kind of have these news conferences all to themselves. And you can kind of see why. I mean, there's not always a lot of room at a news. Bitcoins, the world's first practical internet cash. A nightmare for governments to try and control. Inflation and counterfeit resistant. They return you some control over your money. And a new measure of anonymity. A lot cheaper to use than PayPal. You can use them to buy tax-free cigarettes and almost anything else. I accept Bitcoins. So can you. Get started at WeUseCoins.